had anticipated actually being uh, in a stable place to be able to be on screen and also share space with you all. But I am in the middle of traveling back from dropping off one of my students. Uh, um, from UC Santa Barbara, we have a college immersive program that we operate that's in the middle of taking place. So you got to bear with me, but I am prepared for today's conversation. First and foremost, I just want to welcome you all to today's listening session. I want to share with you about the process, but I also want to create space for an answer for many of you who may have some curiosities around what this process is, how it came about, and what the expectations are going to be as we move forward. Um, with that being said, I will jump right into today's context and content. All right. Um, Welcome. And jumping into it, uh, the purpose of this whole process over the next 2 weeks is to actually come up with community focused, community based, and also impactful recommendations that we will be submitting to the Board of Supervisors by way of the CEO for the amount of unspent funds that have happened. For anyone who knows the history of the Care First Community Investment as well as Measure J, you know that this all started because the community came together to actually vote to make sure that 10% of the county's annual budget is set aside for Care First initiatives, particularly alternatives incarceration and direct community investments. There were several different parts of our community that wanted to make sure that we saw Care First jails last. And there are several efforts from the alternative incarceration movement that helped us get here. And since then, we have been able, by way of the Measure J Advisory Committee, that then turned into the Care First Community Investment Advisory Committee, to allocate resources every single year toward different concepts and program areas that actually impact our community for the better. In fact, there are over 400 different community-based organizations, many of them who started off with budgets less than $1 million, who have been able to broaden their work because of the existence of Measure J funds and CFCI funds. So to all of my colleagues who may also be on the line here today, to all of the community-based organizations, community leaders, and just to the regular community member who wants to see something different in their community that helped to get us to this point. Hundreds of millions of dollars are flowing through our communities because of your work, and we are grateful and we're thankful, right? So in all of that, money has actually gone in several different ways, right? So yes, we have a third-party administrator that has helped us to steward resources directly to community-based organizations for several of our program areas. We also have county departments that have actually gotten the lion's share of the funds because of several different programs and projects that already exist, and also things that were actually brought about to help to steward those resources in those different ways, by way of housing, by way of reentry work, by way of several different ways that we can impact our community. And in the process of all that, there were several dollars that ended up unspent over the years. That is due to county bureaucracy and how the upstart of funds actually take place. That is also due to programs not being able to start on time. There's several different reasons why we got here, but we're talking to the tune of upwards of over $200 million worth of unspent funds that have to be thought through and reallocated to make sure that they can get to our community, right? And so because of this, the Board of Supervisors back on May 6th saw it to actually make sure that there was a process for this because the CEO's office had their own ideas of how these dollars should be recommended and supported and placed. But we know that through the processes that we have had for funding allocations over the last 4 and 5 years that we have done together, community needs to be involved. And so thank you to Supervisor Mitchell's office for putting forth that motion and also getting unanimous support from her colleagues. Others that need to be reallocated need to come by way of the Care First Community Investment Advisory Body first. Now, because of all that, and as you mentioned, May 6th is about a little bit more than a month ago. That put us in a predicament because in order to make sure that we have input and say so on how those dollars get recommended and get allocated, it is incumbent upon us to be able to come up with that game plan by July 31st, 2025. Okay? So we are setting precedent today together, everyone. We are making history together, everyone, but we have to do it in short order and in short time. Okay? So today's focus is really helping to make sure that you understand how you can shape how unspent CFCI funds and dollars are allocated. And I just want to be very, very clear. The process that I am outlining today is not an RFP process, okay? It is your chance to actually influence allocation. And we'll get to breaking that down together in a few moments, okay? Let me just go ahead and just make the clarification right now. This is a rare and critical opportunity to process propose funding concepts that reflect real community needs. As you all know, we've always done a survey to be able to make sure that we have a pinpoint of making sure that the things that community is identifying are reflective in those recommendations. And to be clear, what this is a chance to recommend concepts for funding, right? It is a way to influence county funding priorities. It's also a community-driven budgeting process in action. But like I said earlier, what this is not is it is not an RFP or grant opportunity, not yet. And what I mean by that is this process creates the bucket of funding along with putting resources in that bucket for things that may not already exist in our communities, right? Or for things that do exist, but may be underfunded or may not be funded at all. Like it could be something that community-based organizations are already doing. It could be something that county departments may already be doing. But it needs additional resources or needs an allocation of resources to help make sure that those things can actually happen in a very full way. But what that means is just we are creating the ideas of the buckets and also the funding amounts for those buckets. But then after that, that third-party administrator or that county department will still have to do an RFP process, and you will still have to qualify to get those funds, right? So just because you put forth a concept does not mean that you automatically get funds. I want to be very, very clear about that. That is not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is reshaping how funding is actually getting into our communities and the types of resources that are being funded, right? So we're doing that together. This will not guarantee your organization to receive funds. And it is also not a top-down county decision either, right? And that's what we're trying to get away from with being able to put this in the hands of the people and put this in the hands of us together, rather than having someone like the CEO's office just make unilateral decisions about how these dollars should be allocated. All right. So what is a funding concept, right? I think I just explained that. But just to make it clear and to put it down so that in this recording, like I said, it's an idea for a program project or strategy that should be funded using CFCI dollars. It's something that is already happening, but underfunded, or a project that is ready to launch on day one. And I think the day one piece is a really important part because these are unspent funds and these are one-time funds, meaning that these are dollars that have to be spent within this year or allocated this year or encumbered in this year. These dollars, unspent funds, may not be able to create, be usable for things that don't exist already. This is not necessarily for new programs, but it is for things that could be new funded programs, meaning it's something that the county is not paying for or is not allocating resources for, but it may be something that you in your community or working with a county department may already be doing. It's just bootstrap, right? So an example of that is like a mental health worker pipeline for youth of color, right? That is a concept. Or a pilot for basic income programming for reentry populations. That is a concept, right? Community-led transportation support in unincorporated areas. That is a concept. Allocated resources for churches to build housing, and it's like the last mile dollars to make sure that they can get access to tax incentive dollars. It's like that is a concept that actually can be utilized for something like this, and that housing is for like reentry or for families and stuff like that. So again, these are one-time funds that must be expensed this fiscal year. And so even if you're proposing something that might be a multi-year concept, it still needs to be able to sunset with no ongoing staffing or funding obligations beyond this timeline. Okay, so one-time funding means it's not ongoing. So this is not similar to funding that we have allocated in years past, which were ongoing funds. This is taking dollars that were allocated before and reallocating in a different way to make sure that can actually still take place in our community, but it just has different rules. All right. I'm almost done and we get to the Q&A. So thinking about the timeline about what happens, right? First, it starts with the concept by way of our concept recommendation form, and I'll talk about that in a second. Once our concepts and recommendations get approved by the Board of Supervisors, it gets allocated, and those funds are actually available. And at that point is when the third-party administrator or the county department or whoever is the steward of those resources will put out opportunities for proposal for organizations or programs to get funded. From now until July 7th, this is where you want to take your pen out and write some things down. From now until July 7th, we will be collecting community and county department submissions for concepts. Okay, so that's from now until July 7th. All through July, the advisory committee will be reviewing all the input and making decisions about which concepts that we're going to add to our recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. Once we have that by July 31st, and we have slated to actually try to have that approval by then, we'll be submitting those recommendations to the Board of Supervisors by way of the county CEO. And by late summer, those allocations will be either approved or not approved by the Board of Supervisors, but if they are, then the dollars will definitely roll out come October 1 as a part of the supplemental process for the county's budget, okay? So the most important part of that whole thing is to make sure you get your concept recommendations in within the next week and a half to 2 weeks by July 7th, because it won't even be considered if you don't have your concept recommendation in. So over the next 2 weeks, we have to make sure that those concept recommendations are coming in. And that is for county departments, that is for community-based organizations, that is for community members themselves. Anyone who is trying to submit any recommendation needs to do it within the next 2 weeks, okay? Now, how can you engage? We want to make sure that the community voice is involved in this. So we're asking folks to help us get the word out to community members through a survey so that we can understand what the types of things are needed in our communities. So we do have a survey for that. But aside from the survey, there's also, you have the ability to submit your concepts for funding, like I said, and I will put that link in the chat for you to be able to submit. Give me 1 second so I can do that. Here you are. And that is the concept recommendation form. Okay. All right. So you want to make sure that thank you for coming to today's listening session, but we also have two more, June 26th from 9 to 10, and also June 27th from 1 to 2. That's June 26th from 9 to 10 a.m. and also June 27th from 1 to 2 p.m. And, just as closing thoughts, and we'll get into Q&A, it's important that we can't let these unspent funds go back to the departments without any community voice. So let's shape the world and shape the future of LA County together. These are your tax dollars, okay? So let's direct them where they are needed most. So what we need your help with is sharing this information widely. Make sure you submit boldly, and let's fund the future we want to live in. All right. That is all the information. Let's get into the Q&A. Get some help from the JCOD team to help to field questions from folks, and I guess put some order in alignment for our work, and for anybody who has any questions. In fact, you can just raise your hand. I'm asking for help though, because as I mentioned earlier, I'm actually driving, so I cannot actually look at my phone and select folks for any questions that might be there.
Thank you for joining today's CFCI Advisory Committee listening session for one-time funding recommendation process. This meeting was recorded, and by remaining in this meeting, you consented to being recorded. If you have any questions or comments during the meeting, please raise your hand by scrolling to the reactions tab at the bottom of the page, and use the raise your hand feature. When accessing Zoom through the smartphone browser, scroll to more at the bottom tab. There should be 3 buttons above more, and you will see a drop-down menu with the raise your hand feature. Telephone participants may press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. And we'll go in the order that the hands were raised. I see Cheryl Epps. Your hand was raised first.
Thank you, and good afternoon. My question is, are we able to submit under multiple times for different programs or different concepts?
So what we want to do, the answer to that question is yes. Like if it's different programs, we want to make sure that the same program is not being submitted multiple times, right? And it doesn't matter if multiple people are submitting the same thing. It's not going to raise the opportunity for that concept to be approved. Like we're going to be eliminating duplication. So I just want to be very clear about that. However, if you have different concepts that are not the same concept, yes, you can feel free to submit those ideas to the concept recommendation form.
Great, thank you. That answers my question.
Mm-hmm.
The next raised hand is Edward Smith. Please move forward.
Yes, just for clarity, we can recommend someone else as well as a expanded program that we already operate.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. But again, just make sure that if you're recommending someone else's program, make sure that they haven't already done it. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The final raised hand online is Kathleen Mosner.
That was perfect. Thanks for calling on me. So it looks like I have a good handle on this concept, but my question was, besides this one-time funding, will there be new RFPs for the 3-year CFCI funding? Is
Yeah.
this like totally separate?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I'm gonna let you finish your question. I'm sorry I cut you off. I'm sorry
Oh, that's
talking.
it.
Go
I
ahead.
was just, but my example was that the year one grants under CFCI will be ending in March. So is there going to be continued? Is that going to continue on?
That's a great question. And I actually heard that as two different questions. So the first one, you know, you are correct. This is a totally separate process than from the ongoing funding process that we have done in prior years. There actually it does go into the second question. It dovetails into the second question you asked. Basically, we have decided in our last CFCI meeting to work to do an extension for year one funds for 1 year, right? And the reason why is because part of the work we need to do is the evaluation of the effectiveness of all the programming. And our evaluation for year one funds has not been completed yet. It will be completed this year, but we want to make sure that we are not prematurely sunsetting any programming or any dollars that are connected to that programming without actually having a effective assessment. And so the year one funds that are currently funded, that you are correct, end at the end of February because it started on March 1st. We're actually going to be extending it for an additional year after that. We're trying to be mindful of supporting those organizations. You know, it's also, you know, in the budget that we're in, you want to make sure that you're giving grace for folks to be able to continue to do the work while we're trying to figure out what we need to do. Now, the second portion of that is that Measure J is law, right? For those who understand the lore of CFCI, it was actually created as with only 3 years of funding allocations kind of connected to it, because Measure J was in flux at the time because it was being sued and was in court. It actually went to the California Supreme Court and has been approved. It is law. And so that 10% set aside is no longer just a 3-year allocation piece. There's now an understanding of how we need to do that work moving forward and allocating funds yearly. So instead of trying to determine what that needs to look like. So there are some board motions that have to be established around this. There are some adjustments, like the last board motion that Supervisor Holly Mitchell's office actually put forward, which is really important, of giving guidelines of how allocation processing should take place. So there's work that still needs to be done and codifying how this is going to go in the future. All that to say that there is a commitment from the CFCI Advisory Committee to make sure that there are additional funding cycles and opportunities for other organizations who may not necessarily be directly tied to resources yet. So please stay tuned on that. Hopefully that very verbose answer was clear enough for you to kind of understand where we're headed and where we're going. Was that okay? Did you understand what I'm saying? Is there any follow-up you have on that?
We still have a few more hands raised.
Oh, please go for it.
Sarah Goldstein, you're the next hand raised.
Yes, hi. Thanks so much for having this meeting and everything. Just to be clear on when we're developing our asking amount, is that something that we should be looking for a 3-year projection, or is it more of a 1-year projection? Because I understand it's a one-time funding, but it really depends whether or not we're asking for when we're putting our timeline and implementation plans together, whether it's a 36-month period or a 12-month period.
These funds are not like the other funding allocations. This is one-time funds. So we're looking for, that's the reason why we're looking for projects that are either already happening and just, concepts that are being funded. Those are kind of going to be prioritized because these one-time funds are 1-year funds.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, Heather Rigby. Oh, she just lowered her hand.
Mhm.
Okay, well, we also have some questions in the chat. Uh, the most recent one that I see, Brandy McAdams, if funding arrives in October, potentially, when do they need to be used by?
September 30.
From Dr. Devon Ivy, will the RFPs be released before October so the services can start in October?
That is our anticipation. That's what our hope is with this, which is the reason why it's important that one, we meet the July 31st deadline, so that wherever these funds actually get allocated to, is there enough preparation time to actually get funding out the door on October 1.
Okay. Next question. What are the expectations regarding reporting and evaluation of how the funds are spent?
I don't read that question again. I'm sorry.
What are the expectations regarding reporting and evaluation of how the funds are spent?
So this again is not an RFP for proposal of funds. So we do not have the jurisdiction on how the, the funds that are uh, the funds that are actually provided by way of RFP, like those bodies of rules and regulations around data collection and all of that will be set either by the county department that is doing that work or the third party administrator that is administering that work. So I don't have an answer to that question.
Okay.
Our job with this is again to create the the pots or the buckets of resources and making sure the appropriate amount of resources are in those buckets. How they get expended will be the responsibility of either the county department or the third party administrator that was administering those funds.
Is the one-time funding over a period of 36 months?
No.
Are these funds for profit as well as nonprofit?
Again, when the dollars get allocated by way of RFP process, that will be determined by whatever body is managing that. That's not for us to say. Again, I want to be clear, everybody. These, just because you put a concept recommendation in does not guarantee you any funds, does not guarantee that your project will be funded by whatever concept you put forward. These are just, again, the buckets of resources that will be going to a thing or to an entity, or I'm sorry, to a idea or a concept that may not be funded by the county currently, right? So I would not look at this like an RFP process. I would not look at this as a funding application or a grant. That's not what this is. This is a concept recommendation for you to be able to help us identify areas that the county should be putting resources in.
Can you do retroactive funding, as in reimbursement for projects already completed September 2025 or September 2026?
Again, how the funding is actually allocated will be by way of whatever entity is actually operating it. But the way the county operates, no. The answer to that question would be no.
Can you please confirm the date of when the project will be ending?
No, I can't.
Okay.
Because it's determined by whatever entity is going to be holding the funds.
Okay. Is there an age range for population served, youth and or adult, K through 12, 18 to 25,
Nope.
etc.?
Nope.
Is the funding reimbursement type or one-time upfront funding given at the beginning of the contract?
I cannot determine it because it's up to whatever entity is actually holding the funds. But again, the way that the county usually does business, no.
That there are two hands online.
No problem.
Vincent Holmes.
You got it. Vincent, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, Derek. Thank you. Quick question. I heard you say that the funds, the date by which you hope to have the funds allocated is October 1st, but I didn't hear the date by which they have to be expended.
It's one-time funds, so it's a year. So it's September 30.
So September, that's not the county fiscal year. So that's just a date.
It's the supplemental process. So like
Okay.
the county's budget is July through June.
Right.
But the supplemental process, whenever additional resources are allocated, what I have been told, and I could be wrong on this because I don't work at the county, it can show up as October 1 to September 30.
Okay, so
go ahead.
I'm just sorry. Just so I can. So if a department receives the funds have to be expended by September 30th of 2026.
I'm sorry. Say it one more time.
If a department receives the funds in October 1st of 2025, they have to be expended by September 30th of 2026.
They have to be spent or encumbered. Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Vincent, your hand is raised. I'm sorry, Stephen, your hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you. Derek, going back to the question regarding CFCI year one funds, this is the first time I'm hearing about the extension. Is this across the board for all program areas from year one that will get the 1-year extension?
We're still clarifying the pieces, but the advisory committee made the recommendation. That recommendation has to actually be vetted by way of the CEO's office, as well as our partners over at JCOD. But that is the intention from the recommendation from the board of supervisors. Yes, I'm sorry, from the advisory committee from CFCI. Yes, that is our intention.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for asking that question.
There are no more hands raised.
All right, friends. Thank you very much for participating. As you can see, there's also going to be 2 more listening sessions. So even after this one, if you still have other questions, you can come and join us at the others. This recording will also be provided to folks too. I'm not sure if we were collecting emails coming into this listening session, but if not, we will find a way to make sure that it is accessible so that people can listen through it. But thank you very much for coming and joining us today. And yeah, like we will keep this party going, man. There's a lot of work to do in front of us. So thank you for your participation and your interest.
Thank you. That concludes the listening session. The recording will end now, and the meeting waiting room will close. Thank you for participating. Have a wonderful day.
Noah, thank you very much for your help. Thank you to the JCOD team as well.